Okay. Here we go. Ben. All right. So some things to keep in mind when you are setting up your set. Your set can help contribute to the shoot's mood. So what vibe do you want for your shoot? And you can try to help you figure that out. You can build a mood board. So images, materials, pieces of text, etc., arranged to evoke or project a particular style or concept. Are you going for happy, sad, serious, comedy, dark, light?
Yeah. Generally, these are used at the very early stages of a production, and it just kind of helps channel what the feel of your project's going to be. I think it's really beneficial to do something like this when you want to figure out the color schemes, because color plays such a big role, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But yeah, that can definitely help figure that out, or help you figure that out. So yeah, location. Scouting or creating one. Half the fun, I think, of set design or production is going on in the real world and looking at places that exist and asking yourself, can this be something other than what it is? And for instance of that is, I did a movie in California where we took a school cafeteria and we just fixed it up in a way to make it look like a prison visiting room. So it's that kind of concept where you look at a place and you think, well, this is what it's normally used for, but what else could we do with it? And that's part of the whole scouting out spaces. And some of the examples that we picked out here, Harry Potter, if you've seen that, the Great Hall is actually inside of Alnwick Castle in England. And then the Ghostbusters station is actually a fire station, or I don't know if they tore it down, but it was a fire station in Tribeca in New York. So that's a big question, though. If you can't find a real world place, then how can you create it?
Yep. And also, you can also scout out locations to use as just like a background or a backdrop, and then build a set out on site too. So it's something to keep in mind. An on-site set could be something as easy as a couple of chairs. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but then you can bring lights out, portable lights out, and get the shot to look super nice.
And 2 ferns.
Right.
Yeah.
2 ferns,
exactly.
exactly.
Well, 3 ferns.
3 ferns. Yeah, with 3 ferns here.
All right. So this is pretty important to keep in mind when you're out on set, and it's something that, like Patty and I were talking about the other day, about taking pictures in a public location to use in your show. Specifically, Patty's interested in our new, what's it called? I'm trying to
The set monitor?
The backdrop, the green screen.
Oh, the virtual.
Virtual set. Thank you. I could not think of that word. So getting permission, both when you're on site, you need to figure out if you need permission to shoot there, even if it's a public facility. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can just walk in and set up, a whole bunch of lights and things like that, or alter the space to make it look like something else. So make sure that you're getting permission, whether it's public or private property.
Does it apply even if you're renting a place, if the facility is rented, such as in the case of a party room in an apartment complex?
Every space is going to be different.
So
it's good to check with them.
Right, you basically would want to get that into your contract, your rental contract, with them ahead of time when you're negotiating, and say, well, I'm planning on shooting something in here, is that all right? And if not, can we work that in and give, can I get permission to shoot in this location?
So I should check with.
So I would ask, usually it's a safe bet to at least get it in written form, just so in case they come back and say, well, we said that you couldn't do that. Well, I actually did, because I have it here in writing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's the safest play, but.
Yeah, well, and especially if you're going to be altering the location at all, like Dietrich was saying, they set it up to make it look like it was a prison greeting area. If you're going to be moving a lot of things around, like tables or things on the walls, things like that, you're going to want to, make sure that that's all right, because most places they're at least going to want to know what your plans are,
Right.
If not, like Dietrich said, have it actually in your contract. So,
Absolutely.
So just find the contact information for the property's owner, and like he said, get it in written form is always, I mean, even if it's an email, that still counts as written form, so.
Yeah.
You got another question? You look like you were about to ask.
Yeah.
No,
I
I'm
were
just
gonna
thinking
say-
this is gonna be tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So,
Oh,
That's all right.
just give him a call.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, give him a call right away in the morning or something, and just make sure that it's okay. And you know, if you don't have written permission, you know, as long as they say yes over the phone, make sure you get the person's name
Yeah,
and their
okay.
position, so that way when you're there, if a staff member comes up and says, hey, what are you doing here? Say, oh, I got permission from so-and-so.
Oh, okay.
And then they can go
Absolutely.
talk to that person, you know.
Okay.
Just make sure you cover all your bases, but definitely having it in written form is
Yeah.
going to be.
So you're saying even a public facility, like for instance, when we say public,
Yeah.
the
Like
Capitol.
libraries, the Capitol.
Parks.
Really?
Parks.
Yeah. I mean,
Parks.
surprisingly, you know, it just
City
depends
parks?
too.
Well-
Even in public though, because if you shoot people, right, Ben, you still need to get their permission generally, right? It depending on where you are and
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, usually if it's a public event that's outside, you don't need to get
Mhm.
every single
Yeah.
person's permission who's there, obviously,
Right.
you know. It doesn't hurt to put up signs like we do for Producers Club saying that someone is here with a camera and, you know, just letting people know that you're recording there. But if you're shooting in a public park and no one's like there, no one's gonna be in the background, I think generally you're probably okay using some type of building that might be there, like a, you know, like a picnic shelter type of thing or something like that. That may be something you want to contact the park about and let them know that you want to use that. Because sometimes, depending on the park, sometimes those can get rented out or, you know, by people for parties or whatever, and so.
That's exactly it. If whatever you're shooting is preventing other people from enjoying that area,
Mhm.
then that's probably a good situation to at least get the permission from the city, and that way you can ask anybody who wants to use that area, well, we're going to be here, I have a permit, we're only gonna be here from this time to this time, so they know then, oh, well, maybe if I come back later, I can use that spot too. You know?
Interesting.
But I'm gonna just ditto what Ben said, but yeah, cover your bases in that way, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if it's last minute, that's a good way to do it, is just find the contact person, so then you just say, we'll go to them. They told me I can do it.
Yeah.
Yes, but, yeah.
Interesting.
All right, so creating. Shoot, there was, oh man, and I just had a thought before this one, but creating, considering resources. So obviously, when you're trying to think of a place to shoot, you know, when does this happen? Is it day, night, outside, inside? Should there be rain? Should there be snow? Is there, you know, is it a particular time or event, you know, that happens in your community? I'll give you an example, like Pride Parade is coming up in Minneapolis, and maybe you want that backdrop. You know, it's a public event, you're out there, and, you know, maybe you like the crowd noise behind or something, I'm not sure. But that's something to consider. Where, again, like rural, urban, what? This one's a big one because sometimes it's easy to forget in an uncontrolled versus controlled environment about props that you might want to bring with you. And it can be something small too, that a character, like, it could be anything from a cane to what a character wears to, I'll give you, for instance, that Woody Harrelson movie was shooting in St. Paul. What was the name of that movie? Do you remember?
Is that pretty recent?
It was very recent, like maybe, was it maybe 2 years ago. But they were looking for a very specific type of Dodge Taurus that was made in, like, I think 2003 or 4. And so they put out a casting call for that very specific vehicle, right? And so that's the sort of thing you want to think about if your project takes place during a certain time period. Like if you're doing a 1950s thing, you wouldn't want cell phones or fancy modern day cars in the backdrop. You want to control that and just kind of think about what items existed and maybe find those.
Mhm.
Anyway, those are just some thoughts on that, considering resources, what you have access to.
Okay. All right. So building a set, consider a scene's purpose. Think about and plan for the scene. So what will the camera see? How much of the set do we need to create, and do I need a green screen or a blue screen? So A lot of modern films and TV shows and stuff are actually shot, like as you can see up on the top right there, that's Game of Thrones, are shot with giant green screens and blue screens, even on location. And you know, it's a necessity really, because if you look at the second picture down below that, that is the Twin Towers in the story of, or is it called the Twin Towers or the Twins? The Twins, it's called.
Yeah, something like that.
That doesn't exist. It's not something that exists in real life. So they created that in post-production, but it's still a shot on location. So you get a lot of the other like foreground and things like that in there.
I'm going to piggyback off what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
Ben. So one of the things too that I just remembered is that an exterior of a building does not necessarily have to match the interior in real life. So what I'm saying is you could shoot the exterior of Bloomington's, BCAT studio here, but then the internal, you could go wherever you want and say, this is my internal set of what I am showing the viewer it looks like inside this place. And they do that for a lot of movies and things, surprisingly. Yeah.
I can't think of a specific example.
Oh, I got one for you.
Okay.
The Office. I don't know, on
Okay.
NBC.
Yeah.
If you ever watched The Office with Steve Carell, they shot that in Burbank Studios, I believe, in California. But they had a crew go to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and actually take B-roll of exteriors of buildings out there, and then they just made up sets in the Burbank studio to.
Yeah,
work
I just
that.
thought of some other ones. I don't know if this is. I can't say for sure if the interior shots are in a set, but I'm guessing they are just based on how they look. But like the Indiana Jones movies, for an example, they shot stuff over in the Middle East for the exterior. I'm trying to blank on the name of that building that's out there, but then the interior, when they're inside this structure, this cave, is pretty obviously a set, especially when the earthquake happens and it starts breaking apart and they fall in the cracks and stuff like that. That didn't happen on location. So,
Right, yeah, they didn't shake the ground
yeah.
and then, whoa, how'd they do that?
How about the
Cool.
TARDIS that's about 5 times bigger on the inside than the outside?
Yeah.
There you go.
Huh?
Exactly. Yeah. So there's ways to kind of cheat reality and stuff. And,
That's exactly it. You're tricking it.
yeah.
So now how do they handle on that left side? You see the green screen, but it only goes to the floor. So unless you're aiming upward,
You mean this picture
yeah,
right here?
unless they're aiming upward and getting like a
Yeah,
upper shot,
so-
how do they handle the fact that everything is gray under their feet?
Well, that's, I think,
The-
I remember that scene, that's actually in the shot, so they're on the end of the
Oh,
bridge.
that's, okay.
Exactly.
So the bodies and everything, so that's meant to be,
Oh, that is meant to be that
That's
way.
yeah. So it's a great example though, the combination of what a CGI artist will do in post versus having real actual thing. What's the word? That I'm forgetting it. Tangible, real objects that are actually there that you could touch,
Physical,
feel, and
yeah.
manipulate, right? And what I've noticed, at least in more modern movies, like, have you guys seen The Hobbit? Or
Yeah.
any of that? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know. Right? I'm sorry, guys.
Everybody's
but there's
Sorry.
definitely parts in that movie where you can tell that separation of what's CGI versus what's real,
Yeah.
and that the actor is holding on to. Now, that could be because, if you watch it on a 4K TV, things just pop out like that. But in general, technology's gotten so good to the point that it's hard to distinguish between computer graphics and what's actually in people's hands, because there's so many good artists out there who can do that work. But anyway, back in the day, that was one thing I appreciated, and I think Ben, you and I have talked about this, how Star Wars used actual props and
Yeah.
monsters that were made and just sets.
Yeah.
Um,
All of the
yeah.
spaceships and stuff are little models that they
Right.
shot with black backgrounds and stuff to make
Right.
it look like they're actually flying out in space.
Yeah.
Okay, so then taking the other scenario that I was suggesting, supposing that you didn't want that, you wanted to replace your ground and all, so you can
Oh.
look at it from the standpoint of being in the studio here. You have somebody standing in front of the green screen, but their feet
Yeah.
are in front of the floor. So other than having a green floor,
Mhm.
Yeah.
how do you deal with that sort of situation?
We're limited here, obviously. I mean, it's not a Hollywood studio, so we're limited on our resources.
Okay,
and the
so that's
props
just
that we
one of
have
our
available.
a limitation that we have.
So if you wanted to have like a specific type of floor here, like, you know, let's say you wanted them to be like standing on a wood floor, and then in the background in the green screen you make it matching you know, wood interior of, like, you know, like we were talking about the James J. Hill Library or something like that, that's like fancy looking like library or something, but you want to be able to see like all of their feet. It would take a lot of work to do this, but you'd basically have to have a raised floor that goes right up to the green screen that's
Okay,
made of,
I
that's
gotcha.
actually made of wood that they're standing on.
Okay.
And then you would key in that, you know, you'd have to make it match just right. That's where, like Dietrich was saying, like the people that do the actual CGI and stuff, they're insanely talented and spend an insane amount of hours tweaking these things to
Yeah, okay.
make them match.
That's
so,
called, it's called rotoscoping,
yeah.
but we won't get into that.
I had a little
Crazy.
experience with rotoscoping
Oh.
with my Dancer of the Month.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's.
I didn't know what was going on, but Jeannie did.
So
Yeah.
unfortunately here, that's how we would have to do it. I would love if we had a green screen psych wall that they could
Yeah.
just stand on.
So essentially elevate, like if you were
What?
playing a musician or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ben,
Yeah.
couldn't you? I'm wondering. I mean, if it's possible, since if you get the right color material, and you put it on a platform,
Mhm.
and then set the musician or whoever's standing on that platform, but that platform matches the background. I wonder if you could key out.
You
You could probably key it all out, right?
If it was just a you know, a green key
Yeah.
color, like the,
Yeah.
you know, the wall that we have is just the standard key, you know,
Yeah.
green
Mhm.
screen key green. So yeah, I mean, you definitely could do that. But
Get the floating in space.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it is.
and
Pretend
yeah,
you're flying.
and at some point we might end up having a raised floor in here too. So I'm just
Pretty
looking
cool.
into that, but.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
mhm. All right, lighting. Lighting is a big deal in set design and in anything really, but lighting can dramatically change how your set looks. You know, you could have, even in here, you could have the exact same set, not, you know, set up a set how you want it, and set up two different lighting scenarios that look make the set look like you're in a completely different space. And we can kind of like play around with that in a little bit too. One of our producers here, his show, he purposely leaves all the backlights off so that it looks really dark, because he wants the background to look really dark and, you know, dramatic and things like that. So lighting, you know, it's 75% of stage design is lighting, because it really does dramatically alter how your scene looks.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, no, I mean, you can just take a look at that picture. It's amazing when all the lights are turned on versus when some are turned off, and hard shadows are created, and
Mhm.
just the feel that it evokes when you watch something.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an example in a movie that I've seen recently. It just escapes me, but
Mhm.
anyway. Yeah, if you play around with it, what I found at least is that depending on the mood you want, you know, certain angles tend to lend itself better. I don't know, Ben, if you know more about that, where, like you were saying, like if you want to make a silhouette character, you know, to be more dramatic of an instrumentalist playing, they do this a lot in jazz shows or
Mhm.
things like that, where it'll be a smoky lounge vibe or whatever. I sound corny right now. Whatever, you know what I mean though, like that sort of thing.
Our ladies
anyway.
Evoke the atmosphere of the
Yeah, like
smoky lounge.
Right,
Yeah.
smoky lounge. Or they have a fog machine, and combined with the lights, it makes it look like, I don't know, super cool. For some reason, Prince is jumping in my head right now. Like
Yeah.
he was just such a showman. But anyway.
Well, and this
yeah.
this doesn't exactly pertain to set design necessarily, but it does in a way as far as the like lighting goes. But there's movies out there. I think they did this in La La Land, where when it's focusing on the soloist, all of a sudden the lights in the background go out and you see the light on them kind of come up, and it's highlighting them, and it does it slowly, you know, it does this kind of like seamless change, slow change in the lighting to highlight that person. You're in the same space, but the set looks completely different, and it's evoking a completely different emotion. And then you know, once it kind of comes back to reality or whatever, if you will, and it, you know,
It
switches
flips
back,
back.
and
Yeah.
sometimes very quickly, and you know, or whatever. But
Film noir with a sense of dread with the deep
Oh,
shadows.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
um,
So, yeah, lighting, as we were talking about, suggests emotion, and this is a little chart that I'd found about what different emotions can mean. Generally, colors, though, can suggest a positive or a negative emotion. Red can mean strength, love, you know, all that stuff. It can also mean anger. And you see that a lot in, I would say, violent movies, where you'll notice the shade of everything seems to be tinted a little bit red, or just in that color. Blue has the exact opposite feel. It can be calm and relaxed, like everything's tranquil, or it can be really cold, like somebody is dead. I'm trying to think of a...
like a winter scene.
Yeah, a winter scene. That's exactly right. A winter scene's a good one. Yellow, optimism or fear. Horror movies. What's that one?
I've
Oh,
never
there's a couple.
thought of, or
Well,
yellow and fear is interesting.
Yeah,
The
oh.
first one that came to my mind. Sorry, the first
No,
one that
no.
came to my mind is Terminator. The scene where it's like the nightmare that she's having or whatever, the end of the world
Right.
at the beginning. That's like just totally like yellowed out.
Right.
Oh, what are the movies? I can't think of it. Road Warrior.
Mad Max.
Mad Max.
Yeah, Mad
like,
Max
Those are like
is very
all
yellow.
yellow. Like all of those
Yeah.
movies have a yellow. Well, not the very first one.
Not
The desert ones do. Have
That
a-
is interesting to see.
Well, and it's
Yellow.
context too, right? Because optimism, I mean, I can think of a few, like in Up, there's some scenes that are shaded in yellow where you feel happy, like it's springtime.
Sunny yellow.
And there's like, yeah, a lot of love. Green, I was surprised by this one, refreshment or boredom. I never noticed a scene with green that was boredom. I usually consider green to be, I don't know, I'm struggling with that one, but
Maybe it's a fine line between tranquil
yeah.
and boredom.
Yeah.
Because you've got like
Around that.
institutional green.
Right.
That, you know, those kind of walls
Yeah.
would evoke that, whereas like grass green can bring the freshness. So there's, I think there's something to the range of the colors
Like a
and the tinting.
grade. That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking about the yellow too. Maybe it's
Yeah.
a grade yellow that's more, because I think of a sunny yellow as optimistic, but maybe a
Right.
grade down
Grade
yellow
yellow.
is
kind of
If-
yellow
yeah,
orangish.
It's hard.
kind of like when the lights begin to dim and it gets a little
Mm-hmm.
orangey yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you've got like the golden hour, you know, outside
Yeah.
when the,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you get a different kind of
Yeah.
feeling with the
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
yellow.
With the boredom thing, I don't know why. I can't think of any specific examples in
Me
movies
neither.
like this, but
Yeah.
like the only type of thing, the scene that pops into my head that I'm making up in my head right now is like a therapist's office or something.
Oh,
Mm.
sure.
I
I don't
don't know why that comes to mind, but
and I don't know where this would fall. Maybe you three can tell me, but The Matrix has a lot of green
Oh.
in it, and I'm like, does that really? To me, in that context, it's more like techie,
Yeah.
or like you know what I mean,
Digital.
like
Yeah.
digital,
Yeah.
digital
Mhm.
stuff.
that's what I was gonna say.
But it didn't. Yeah, I don't know. So when I found refreshment and boredom, I had to think to myself, I don't know. So again, maybe it is context though, and how a filmmaker uses that.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
again, like
Yeah.
khaki green, like military, it's like that could
Exactly.
it's like that, there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of range.
Yeah.
What's his
True.
name? There's a director. Oh, duh. Michael Bay.
What's his name?
Michael Bay,
Who?
of course. Yeah, that guy. He does this interesting color mix though of blue and orange. In almost all of his newer movies, from Transformers, like the first Transformers until now, he uses a color scheme of blue and orange, and it's like this rich orange that kind of evokes warmth but also anger at the same time, but blue, and so they bounce off each other, and it's really interesting when you look at his movies. It just
What's
stands
his
out
name?
to me in Transformers
Michael
and
Bay.
Michael Bay. He's known for a lot of military movies or before that. I mean,
Yeah.
he was doing. He has really good relations anyway with like our U.S. military. So you'll notice that when he shoots military scenes, it's usually that blue to show how cool things are. But then when guns start going off, and he's known for explosions, everything's bright orange and like
It's the contrast.
fabulous. Yeah.
So
a
it's not
beautiful
like-
contrast.
Well, I guess the first thing I want to distinguish is these are not objects. This is the color of light.
This is the color of light. So.
Okay.
But
So
it could apply to your actual
Could
set
apply
as
to
well.
objects too, yeah.
Yeah.
Like when I thought of like a therapist's office, I thought of those, like we have one of these at home, one of those desk lamps that have the green glass over them.
Yeah.
I don't know why that
Yeah.
just popped into my head. One thing that I was gonna mention too, and I wish we had a picture of it because it's all over this show, but going back to Game of Thrones, they do a really good job of playing with color, even in the earlier scenes. I'm going back and rewatching it right now, and I just watched episode 1 of season 1 the other day, and I saw a scene that I did not notice the lighting in it before, and then I was like, oh, that's awesome. But it's a scene where if you're familiar with the show, Ned, he's one of the main characters in the first season. The camera shot is on him, a nice close-up shot, and over his right shoulder at first you can see his wife, and there's a fire going beside him here, so she's all lit up nice and orange and looking really good and everything, you know, and the right side of his face is all nice and orange, and she's saying to him, you know, he's being called upon to go be the hand of the king, and she's saying, you need to be here in the north, this is where you belong, type of thing. And all of a sudden the camera pans over, and it's the maester, who's they, you know, are the healers basically and stuff. He's the one who's saying, you know, this is your duty, you're being called to do this, so you need to go and serve your king. And so it does this, and on that side he's a lot farther away from the fire, and you get this kind of dark blue lighting coming in from the window. So it's like it's like
Oh,
the
that's
angel and the
interesting.
devil type of thing. And they do that a lot. And later on in the later seasons, they use it a lot in their promotional stuff. A lot of the posters and pictures and things that are being posted online showed just a straight shot on all these characters, and you see light on one side and blue on the other. And it's also partly because the name of the books is a Song of Ice and Fire. So you know,
Right.
it's always going back to that contrast. So that's another cool way that you can kind
Maybe
of.
you guys should try a color scheme that puts yellow and green contrasted.
Yeah.
Red and blue are such a dynamic, or like orange and blue,
Yeah.
that's such a dynamic juxtaposition, I guess. But yellow and green, I don't know, I feel like it wouldn't be as like dramatic or as cool. I'm probably going to be proven wrong. Prove me wrong, somebody.
Yeah.
One way to find out. Let's
I'd
try
love
it.
to know. But yeah, the other ones, did any of the other ones surprise you, Ben? Or you two? The purple, or I don't know.
Actually, the whole thing about colored lighting, I think, is
Yeah.
interesting. It's not something I've really thought about. Okay, we've used
Yeah.
lights and gels to tweak color skin tones, but
Right.
in terms of actually using the colored lights to create mood, as opposed to, again, having colored objects
Right.
in the scene is an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, looking kind of through this, you know, initially when I looked at white, it says mourning, grief, depression. You know, I actually think initially of black for that, which a lot of people probably do, but really when you think of black, it's more of like what people wear, you know, because traditionally
Yeah.
people wear black to funerals and while they're grieving and stuff like that. But I have seen movies where, you know, the scene is purposely like blown out, and you have this person who's very sad, like sitting by a window, and this long, like, you know, zooming in shot on them as they're, you know, they're mourning or whatever, and it's like generally very bright white behind them, you know, no matter what they're wearing.
Well, if you think in, obviously, grief and depression don't always necessarily denote death, but if you think in terms of death, the association is often afterlife and into the light.
Yeah.
And so there you often get that blown out white scene.
Yeah, kind of.
Empty.
Even if somebody is going
Yeah.
into the light, that's maybe a good thing, but the person left behind is
Right.
experiencing the mourning. So I could see where that could
Yeah.
Plus, white light can be used to create that sense of empty because you can see
Right.
everything, or if there's nothing.
Or see
where-
nothing.
Where
See nothing.
black is
Yeah.
creating, you know, that mystery that you can't pierce with vision.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
Good point, yeah.
mystery
Yeah.
versus empty.
Empty.
And you know, there is an aspect of white that, if if you think about it, if you're in a really large room
Yes.
and the ceilings are very high and the walls are, and you don't have a lot of furniture, what's one of the first things that a decorator will suggest is to maybe create a false ceiling or put something in there because it feels empty, and that I can see being associated with feelings of grief, depression, mourning. So that's very interesting.
There's actually a lot of history you can read on for stage theory for lighting for the stage that it has very specific histories for using all the different colored lights to evoke, especially with opera. There's quite a
I'm sure.
a
Yeah,
bit.
absolutely. Well, and Ben, you brought up that good example of it. I can't believe I forgot La La Land, but yeah, where lights come on to a certain character to draw everybody's focus to it. But again, like we were talking out there before we started doing this, stage plays, they do that sometimes too to allow other cast members to move things around in the background. I kind of wonder though, I guess if you guys have ever seen, we really recently went to a Lady Gaga concert recently, as in a year ago. Anyway, but during that whole thing, I noticed how the lighting would switch up depending on what the theme of the song was, and it affected how I interpreted the song dramatically. Like if everything had just been blown, like normal lighting, it would have been like, okay, cool, you're a really good singer. Hey.
So now what's curious about that is these, I'm going to presume, are songs that you knew already.
No, actually, I
Oh.
didn't. I was just listening for the music. I know some of them. I'm
So
not.
you didn't have it's not like going to hear your favorite song and then seeing it lit differently and then you having a different reaction to it. That's what I was
That would
curious
be.
about.
Oh, that's.
Because if you
that's
hadn't
a good
heard
idea.
if you hadn't heard, like, say if she came out with a new song that you hadn't heard, you wouldn't
Sure.
have any preconception about it. So I guess my curiosity was, oh, yeah, that's my favorite song. And then I'm curious about how the lighting could affect your own perception of your favorite song if it's something that you'd
Oh,
heard.
I mean, well, yeah. I mean, definitely. You guys have seen. Well, Ben, I think you've seen the movie Logan, right?
I haven't. No.
Oh, you haven't.
No,
Darn.
It's
Okay.
on my list.
Okay. All right.
Logan,
Well,
the
movie night.
yeah, it's a superhero movie, but
oh, okay.
what I noticed
Logan's
is
Run came to mind. That's old.
I watched the original version, which is all in color, and then they released a version that's all black and white, and everything just felt different when I was watching it. I don't know why. It's the same thing with Mad Max Fury Road. If it's a great movie, but if you watch it in color versus black and white, there's just something about that. It was more intense to me when I watched it in black and white versus when I watched it in
Oh,
color.
interesting.
And that was just my personal perception of it. I don't know how other people took it, but that's I think a good example of how that could just changing the color scheme could change how a scene plays off or what the feelings come off as.
It's the same thing in still photography too.
Yeah.
A lot of my pictures, I'll after I go through and edit them in color, I'll go back and put them in black and white, and often more often than not, I end up liking the black and white better because it just completely portrays a totally different emotion in a different scene. Plus, black and white also tends to be more contrasty as
Yeah.
well.
Yes.
So something about that, like you see like the edges more, like these hard edges and things like that, and like the blacks
Yeah.
really stand out more and things like that. Something about that too, just being in black and white.
Yeah.
There's more
Totally
visual
different.
drama to it.
Yeah.
That's a good way to term it, visual drama. Yeah.
This isn't quite the same as the colored lighting, but there's a show on TV. I was at somebody else's house.
No,
So
you go on.
I think
okay.
that it's SWAT LA,
Oh, okay.
and
yeah.
it's on network. But the very interesting thing about it is they use angles that are a little bit askew. So they're not straight on or straight from the side. So it gives you a little bit of drama. But not only that, but the color. Now this is where the difference between lighting and objects. Their scenes tend to be very monochromatic. Like the SWAT team uniforms, the pavement, the buildings, and then there'll be a pop of some with the lighting is white lighting, but dramatic, a little bit more dramatic than just straight lighting. But then there'll be a pop of some color, like a colored car that goes across or something. Very effective, and that thread of sort of the monochrome with just a bit of color seems to follow through with those slightly skewed camera angles that give you just a bit of drama over the straight horizontal.
Yeah, I think, are you talking about Dutch angles? Kind of, so like a traditional camera angle, you're shooting this way, but with a Dutch, you're maybe slightly off like this.
Well, and
or
not just
slightly
like
off
that, but
this,
maybe
or-
a little bit like that too. A little bit
Okay.
off in the 3D. I've not heard that term Dutch angle, but
Dutch angles, yeah.
yeah, it's
Ben knows
just-
what those are, but
I'm going to look that up.
Anyway.
Dutch
Those
angles.
Dutch angles are used a lot in like horror films, like
Yeah.
especially as the
Oh.
camera's moving, you might see like a, it's like moving down a hallway and then it like slowly does this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, anyway, I think that's all. I don't know if there's enough to that or not, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, so, yeah, I mean, we could do a whole another producers club on lighting, and maybe we will sometime,
Yeah.
but one other example that just popped into my head was, I'm so bad with names tonight, my brain is not working. What's the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, came out a couple years ago, it's like Wild West, or not Wild West?
Remnant.
Revenant.
Yeah,
The
Revenant.
Revenant. That's
Thank
a
you.
Oh,
yeah,
Big
great
Bear.
example.
So
Yeah.
lighting in that movie, I mean, that was all shot like out on location,
Yeah.
and the lighting in that movie was all completely natural light,
Mhm.
which is just unbelievable. There's a scene where they're on horses and all they're holding is torches, and that's the only thing lighting the scene. I mean, to be able to do that scene, they have a camera that can basically see in the dark, so that it's not super grainy. You know, it's a super high-end camera, of course, but it's just it's such an unbelievable scene for the lighting, and I cannot believe that whole movie was shot entirely with natural light. I mean that was they basically, as far as a set goes for their movie, they had like probably no budget for a set because it's just like they're
But
on
what
location.
I mean, to your point though, Ben, like that's exactly somebody though, whether it's the director or somebody on that crew, had to think about the time of day. Is it going to snow or rain on us? What elements will we have to deal with if we're out in nature just shooting this movie?
And continuities.
And
a nightmare.
continuity.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
right?
Continuity is an interesting question.
Right. What if it doesn't rain again for
Or
2 weeks?
The clouds are
Yeah.
just a little bit different in the
Right.
sky from one day to the next if
Right.
you didn't finish
Yeah, finish that day.
in that golden hour, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was The Revenant or another one that I had heard that they had to shoot. It was the same scene, but they had to break it up into 2 different shoot days for timing reasons and whatnot. And to get the exact same lighting that they had from the first half of the shoot, they had to wait something like 2 months before they could go back out.
Oh.
Wow.
And, and then by that point, then the growth of things is different and everything, and so like you might have some continuity issues anyway. But yeah.
Oh, what that movie with Idris Elba and Kate Winslet? I just watched.
The Mountain Between
The
Us.
Mountain Between Us. That was another like Revenant style where they went up into the mountains and they used all natural lighting, and it was just kind of, well, we're gonna have to shoot this. So I read, I can't remember where I read this, but they had to keep making trips up and down this mountain just to get to the right elevation each time for
Oh.
scenes, and I was like, oh man, that's rough. Like you can't control things on a mountain generally. I wouldn't think, but anyway, yeah. So there's so many factors. I just thought your example though is so impressive. The Revenant. You can go home and watch that. Yeah. Anyway, we digress. What else?
All right, should we move on?
Yeah. Anything else?
Live
Oh,
demo time.
sweet.
Live demo. Oh,
And then I'll just throw this up because that's
Oh yeah, that's us.
coming up at the end.
Contact us if
Yes.
you need anything.
We really didn't plan out a live demo, like as far as what we're gonna set up. So
No.
we're just gonna kind of play around with things.
Sure.
Do you guys have? Let's start off. Do you have any suggestions or questions of how we could set up a set a certain way and here?
Like for interviews or anything? I don't know, I'm curious. So when you were talking, Ben, about dropping the backlights,
Yeah.
and then are each of these lights individually controlled?
Yep.
So you can, okay, so maybe we could play around with that and just see if we can come up with some sort of very dramatic lighting.
Yeah, so I'll start, so these are set to a preset right now. And the way that our lighting grid works is the lighting board, when you turn it on, it will override the presets. So to play around with the actual lighting board, I'll have to go off screen first of all, and then we'll have to turn on the house lights and readjust something. But before I do that, I'll turn on the preset for the show. Democratic Visions is the one that I mentioned before, where he has the background all dark. So you'll see how it'll change. I'll try to do it smoothly, so you see the main lights up front here will stay on, but then the back lights will fade out. So. And he also uses a black curtain as well, so that helps with
That
the.
does help. Betty, do you want to come up and be Jeff Strait? And we can pretend. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know if I
there
can
you
be Jeff
go.
Straight.
Yeah, you did.
So this is
shoes
Jeff's
for Bill.
lighting.
Oh, yeah.
Big shoes.
Even with
I
the
have to take
blue,
my glasses.
Yeah.
even with the blue curtain back there, I mean that changed the lighting dramatically. In my
Yes,
Yes,
opinion.
it did.
He also does use a few less lights up here. Like we got a couple of these lip soil lights that are they're essentially like spotlights. I never noticed that before, but he apparently doesn't use those at all because they're not on right now. So even the lighting on Dietrich and I is
Yeah.
dimmer than we had it before. But just having those backlights off
Yeah.
completely changes the look in here. You know, I mean.
It almost seems a little yellower now.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, and it probably altered the white balance in the cameras. So, I
And
mean,
yellow
we should
is-
Yay.
we
We're
should
either
look the
optimistic or
look the
fearful.
same since we white balanced in this lighting. Dietrich and I should, for
Right.
the most part, look the same, but the overall color of the shot's gonna look very different.
See, I think Dietrich looks a little more yellow. You look about the same.
Oh, Patty, that's racist and I won't tolerate it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's a joke. Oh my gosh, it's a
Dietrich,
joke.
you're yellow.
Calm down. But yeah, that's
You're
no.
cute.
So, but I also wonder too, because obviously different lights have different temperatures, right? So, and Holly, I don't know if you know much about that, but no, it's all right. So,
Kelvin.
like indoor lights, what do you
Yeah.
usually say? Is it? It's not 56K, is it? It's 2.7K, I think. Kelvin.
Daylight, isn't that about 56K?
I think 56. Yeah.
56 is daylight.
56
There are
is
daylight. There are
daylight.
daylight bulbs. You can buy
Right.
daylight bulbs, but I think the just standard tungsten lighting.
Is it
I feel like it's
33 or 34?
or is it 32?
I
Yeah.
feel like it's around there. 34.
Yeah, around 3,000
That
level.
sounds right.
So yeah, in a nutshell, for those of you at home who don't know what we're talking about, lighting has different levels of temperatures, and that's what creates different tones
On a
of
Kelvin
light.
scale.
Yeah,
Kelvin
on a
scale.
Kelvin scale. Yeah, and so so as you said, outdoor is 5,600, and then if you keep going further up, it becomes warmer, right? And then the lower you go on
I
the
think the
scale-
lower
the
you
other way.
go,
The
it's
lower
Is it the
warmer.
other way?
warmer.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, because
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 it-
I
Correct.
worked
daylight,
really hard at remembering.
Infrared
Corrected.
to ultraviolet.
Boom.
because daylight.
I
I love
daylight
that you
to-
say you don't know about this yet. Yeah, you got it.
I'm
All
married
right,
to a
I'm-
chemist.
Yeah,
so
there you
I
go.
pick up a couple things here and there.
So daylight to our eyes when we step outside on a sunny day, you know, it looks warm because the sun is, you know, it's a big fireball, so
And we
it
feel
makes everything
warm.
look
Right.
warm. But if you were to white balance, let's say you had 3,200 lighting inside and you white balanced your camera on that lighting, and then you step outside, your whole entire scene is going to be blue.
Right.
Because that 56K lighting outside is actually much more blue.
Well, and then there's sun angle too. So like that golden hour is when it's at the low angle versus so you can
Yeah.
play with that by your light placement too.
Yeah.
Even with the same light, you can get different effects just by.
Just knowing that though, doesn't it make you question when we go outside, am I really seeing what I'm supposed to be seeing? Like, is this really the right color? I don't know. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
really
Right.
like super green and gangly or something. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know.
Well, I
I
suppose some people are colorblind. so-
Yeah, you would.
That's true. Red, blue, or red,
Really?
green.
No. Huh.
Well, plus if you think of like all the spectrum that we can't see that like bugs can see.
Oh.
Mm.
Don't even get me started. The
Yeah.
bugs. Oh. Summertime. Ugh.
Like we said, we could do a whole nother producer's club
Oh.
on
On lighting.
lighting, and even get into the physics of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. We'll save that. Well,
Save it for another time.
set design wise, what else do you think we could do in here, Ben? Like, how much of the area can a producer manipulate?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So,
So set design has been
Around
one of
here.
my big kind of bugaboos.
Yeah, please.
So-
Yeah,
Trying
here,
to
let's
figure out.
hop up.
yeah. So, Patty, as you know, where I'm standing right now is kind of the center of where our lighting grid is currently set up. These lights can be turned any way you want them to be turned. I'm happy to turn them for people if they want to shoot. And we have one show that shoots off in this corner over here, and then like Jeff's show, which this lighting is set up for, actually shoots this way. So his host actually sits like about here, and then his guest is on the other side of the table over here actually, and his 2-shot is over here facing this way. And so that's the way he sets up his show. So essentially, yeah, this whole big space right here where the carpet is that I'm standing on is the general area where the center of your set should be. But from there, you know, you can definitely turn angles. I'm happy to change lighting around. I just often forget to move it back when I'm done. That's my deal though. But you know, it can be altered, but it's basically this whole big space around me, you know, can be used to change your set however you want. And you know, again, we're limited here on what we have, of course, but we have quite a bit of stuff here that you can make your show look unique. And every show that we have here currently has a completely different setup and a completely different look. You know, we've got a variety of different styles of chairs, tables, things like that. These tall set pieces in the back, I tried to make it look a little different from what anyone else that I've seen before, doing that layering look. Some people will take them and just go 1, 2, 3, 4. Rocio TV, that's no longer here, that's how they did it. And they did it, then we have some shorter pieces that come up to this kind of first level of those tall backdrop pieces that you could set in between, which is what they did.
Does anyone play with foreground shows?
Not so much in here, no. I mean, in a way, if you've got this as your center, you know, a lot of people, like Patty's show uses the big round table right here, and so you have that table in the foreground, but that's about it. Some people will use, we've also got a couple, you might be able to see it on the wide shot, we've got a couple of coffee tables over there where people will put like, you know, fake flowers, of course, on them, or other, yeah. You know, you're welcome to bring in live flowers.
Yeah. Nope, no live flowers.
But a lot of people will use those for doing like demonstration things. For instance, we had a show that just recorded in here a couple weeks ago that they were talking about this competition that you can enter your hostas in. It was all for hostas. And so they brought in an example of it, like they judge it based on one leaf. So you like cut off one leaf from your hosta, like the best leaf of the bunch, and you bring it in to be judged. And so they brought it in.
Is that where green boredom comes in?
Yeah. Oh, that's me.
Oh,
hey, Patty, don't pick on other producers here.
But I'm just saying as an
I'm sorry,
example.
it's a hosta thing. It's a hosta joke.
But I'm just saying as
Very hostile.
You're really
but I'm just saying as an example, that's what they did in the foreground, is they had that set up to be able to you know, sample how you're supposed to set these hostas up. Because apparently it's very specific how it has to be in a bottle, and like the leaf has to be standing straight up, and like they're trying to explain it. It's very intense for a hosta competition. But,
You can cut that part out, Ben.
Yeah.
We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
No, nobody here really plays with foreground other than that. You know,
I think
you
foreground could be distracting. Well, I guess it depends on what you're doing.
Depends on what you're doing, yeah.
I mean, Rocio did a lot of great stuff with their lighting. When I first walked in and saw the color of the lighting that they used, using those curtain lights, nothing we would want to do on an interview show, but their set looked great.
Yeah.
Well, for like an intro though, you know, sometimes they do a rack focus from something in the foreground. Like, say you have one of these plants here, and then you want to put it right in front, and then slide the camera and rack focus to your set as like just right before the host introduces themselves, and then you could say like, Jeff's show, Democratic Visions, slide in rack focus. As soon as that rack is done, cut to the host saying, "Welcome to Democratic Visions." You know, I'm so.
Gives you that sense of entrance.
Yeah, you see it in. Yeah, you see it sometimes in talk shows and stuff where they do that. But
Interesting.
Anyway.
Speaking of Jeff's show, Democratic Visions, too bad he's not here, so we couldn't pick on him a little
I
bit.
know.
But, I helped him with a shot in here one time that had some things in the foreground. He had set up like the cameras, a couple of the cameras in the background and things like that. But then he had like a table. I think it was one of the taller tables, like more in the foreground. And I did a shot with him where he started off to the side, and then I trucked in and followed him as he walked in, and he said his line, and then he went and kind of like set his hand on the table casually type of thing, you know. That's Jeff though. He puts a ton of work into his show, and it's a lot of work to design a set, even with the stuff that we've got here. But Jeff's, he wants every single part of his show to be totally unique, so he's always doing something different. But you're also welcome to bring in your own stuff. We did have a show. He hasn't been here in a long time, but we have a show called the Extraordinary Friends Show, and the producer of that show made his own set. He made a collapsible bar set or whatever, and he used our stools that we have here, but the actual like set that they sat at, he made himself so that it can easily just fold up and go onto a cart, and he brought it in and out each time. But that was a fairly large, I would consider it a foreground object, even though it was the table they were sitting at, but it definitely, it totally changed the look in here completely. He didn't have anything in the background besides a banner that he had made that hung back there. It said the Extraordinary Friends Show. And then just a black curtain, and then this bar set that he and his friends sat at and had a conversation.
Talk,
So
sometimes less is more too, right? You don't need a ton of stuff to make something dramatic. It could just be, I'm just thinking of, sadly, maybe we won't include this, Drake music video, where it's literally a panel behind him, and he's in the middle, and things tend to change around him, but it's really just the focus is on him, but everything else is being manipulated around him with lighting specifically. It's hotline bling. Anyway, you don't need to know that. Anyway, but yeah. Anyway, I'm just thinking of different set designs and how that could work. But yeah, I don't know. That's cool. Well, can producers store stuff here, Ben?
So. Yes and no. A lot of the smaller items we have here, we've got, you can't see it on camera, but there's a rack back there that has a lot of smaller items that have been left here from producers over the years. We don't have a ton of space here, so smaller items like that are usually fine if you can find room for it. Bigger pieces, like actual set pieces, if you want to leave it here, talk to me and we can try to find a place to store it. If it's not seeming like it's going to really fit very well, then you'd probably have to just bring it in and out. But another thing to keep in mind is anything that is here, whether it's bought by BCAT or it's left by a producer, becomes available for anybody else to use on their set. So I think that's part of the reason why the producer of the Extraordinary Friends Show, he made his collapsible so he could take it out because he didn't want people, messing with his set, which is understandable.
A bar, what could go wrong?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and plus he probably wanted his show to be unique too, his set to be unique. So,
Yeah.
Which is, that's great.
Yeah.
So, should we talk about the virtual studio a little bit? So let me change the lighting again.
Sure.
We've got a preset for the green screen as well.
Whoa, it's so bright, man.
So this doesn't.
You've recovered normalcy.
The lighting. The lighting for the green screen. I won't block myself. With
Pretty good deep shadow.
The lighting for the green screen is that all of the backlights there's no color to it, as you can see. You want it to all be the same color temperature because you want the green screen to be lit up as best as you can with the same color temperature lights, because that's going to give you the best key. But maybe I should move. Maybe I should unplug this and move this out of the way here real quick.
Time lapse.
Yeah.
There we go. This is our cool music that is all ours. No copyright infringement here.
Well, you can sing songs. You can sing songs.
Sing it
Can you?
yourself.
Oh, I don't want to sing anything.
Okay, this is good enough.
Alright,
But for
alright.
now, just
Okay.
just so you can see
we
our
go.
green
Skirt
screen
back.
here.
Sweet. Okay, hold on.
So it's not a very big green screen, but it's big enough to be able to do a lot of stuff. So from back behind this panel, that camera is not the one that's on. It's the middle one.
Two.
I know. It's
course.
confusing with that tally light.
Dang tally light.
So, there's definitely enough room here that you can play around with it. But for anyone who's unaware, our new switcher that we've got has a virtual studio built into it. So with our old switcher, you could only use the green screen with one camera angle. If you wanted to have multiple angles, you could record it with just the green, and then in post-production you would go in and you would edit in your own angles. But with this new virtual studio that's built into it, every time you change a camera, it will actually change the background to a different angle as well. And so it comes with some preset in there, but it also has the ability that you can load your own images into it. So you could go, so this is like what Patty and I were talking about before, you could go out on location somewhere, make sure you've got permission to shoot photos and let them know that you're going to be using it in your show. But you could shoot, multiple different angles. I would recommend shooting, start with your wide shot, what your two shot's going to be, and shoot it, multiple different ways. Shoot it as wide as you possibly can, maybe get a little bit tighter and then a little bit tighter, shoot it at maybe like different exposures and stuff so that you can, adjust it later if you need to. And then the same thing with the other angles. Try to imagine where your single shots are going to be, your cross shots. So camera 1 is going to be cross shooting this way, and camera 3 is going to be cross shooting this way. And so then, from the point of where you're standing getting your two shot, then you would turn a little bit and imagine that you're looking at looking at the person. You're the camera and you're looking at that person over there, and try to shoot that angle as well. So and again, shoot it wide, get a little tighter and a little bit tighter, and then do it on the other side as well. And then that way, if you do it just right, it should match up so that that when you switch camera angles, then it is actually looking like you're out live on location. And I would even recommend that this is something you could keep in mind, Patty. The two shot, the wide shot's gonna, for the most part, look pretty well in focus. But another thing you might want to play around with on the single shots is that like rack focus. You could fake a rack focus in the virtual set. So on one of your single shots, if it's a pretty tight shot on the person, the background is going to be pretty blown out. So then you could either purposely blur the shot when you're taking it, or you could blur it in post. And then maybe that's a better way to go about it. Maybe shoot it, because then you have a couple different options. Shoot it, nice and crisp, and then in post, you can blur it out to make it look like your background is, ways off, and you've got this nice tight shot with your rack focus going on. So just some things to keep in mind with that. You gonna say something?
Oh no, I was going to add just to your point. So like with this screen, what we do for one of our shows in Den is we're actually just shooting them from up here. So then you don't have to worry about the feet stuff, and then it becomes easier. And you can actually take almost any still image and just toss it behind somebody by keying them out, which I think, if it's just a newsy style show, it's pretty easy and simple to do. First, Ben, did you ever know Annette Frigale? You didn't? Okay, she did a yoga on the go. I don't know if you ever have seen the show, but she had a green screen like this, and it was always psychedelic. It had like all these rainbows and stuff moving behind her, but she would do yoga poses, and there was always a guy who would stand behind her. It was like really buff randomly. Anyway, it was an amazing. It was an amazing public access show. Yeah, and just stand there like he had glasses on and a white headband, he would, like this, and she'd be just going through her motions. And it was fantastic. But yeah, that's what you give the cable access. Cable access, support us. Okay, anyway, go on.
Well, I mean, so that's about it. you still can shoot things just with the green, record it with the green behind it, and then you can alter it as much as you want in post. You know, you can play around with those different angles and zoom in on them if they're, you know, crop them a little bit or whatever if they're not quite right. Doing it through the switcher in there, through the virtual studio, you know, it's something you would want to play around with quite a bit before, you know, quite a bit ahead of time before you're going to actually record it, to make sure that you get those angles just right. You know, you could make your show in a different place every single episode if you wanted to, and go out and shoot a whole bunch of locations.
When we were kids, was it Carmen San Diego? Where they would do that. Do you two remember that show?
Oh, yeah.
Where they would travel the world, and it was always a
Where in the
different
world is Carmen
backdrop.
San
Yeah, where in the
Diego?
world's Carmen San Diego, and yeah, I thought anyway that's a
That was
good
a great
example.
show.
Yeah, because it introduces you to like different lands or whatever, or cultures. But
Going back to lighting, another thing to keep in mind with these virtual sets is the lighting. You want to try to match the lighting in the studio to the lighting in the background. If you're going out and shooting, like going back to the James J. Hill Library, it's even though there's a good number of windows in there, the dark mahogany wood inside that building makes it look very dark. So if you've got these bright lights on like we've got in here, it's not going to really match. One thing that you could do if they let you is you could check out just an LED light kit and purposely splash some lighting on the background when you take the pictures, and then that way it makes it look like it's the studio lights that's causing that light behind them.
The tricky part of about that is, it's like trying to look at the color of something and then put that aside and then go and match the color without looking and comparing.
Right.
Like if you go and you're at the James J. Hill Library and you go, match this to the studio light? How do we?
they make what are they called? Light meters, right? And you can't you do that?
Oh,
You
okay.
go out
Yeah.
to a location, you measure what that temperature is, and then or come to the
It's-
studio and do that.
Yeah, you could do it. Well, I would do it here first. Not
Right.
only does it tell you the color temperature, but it tells you the foot candle. So that's the power of the light. You know how intense the light is. So then you could go on set then, bring a light kit with you and try to match that as best as you can. You know, you can always take the photos back and alter them and try to brighten them up a little bit or whatever to make it match a little bit more. But
Is it possible to shoot a vlog video on the switchers here where there's no preset color or anything? It almost looks like there's a lack of color. So in post, a producer
like a raw file,
like almost raw, but it's just with the color stripped out of it, so that in post it allows you to manipulate the RGB channels to like whatever you want without distorting the videos too much. Because so anyway, there's maybe this is only on Panasonic cameras. Not that I'm advertising. Stop. It exists elsewhere, but the idea is that you shoot without a color profile, and by doing so, when you're actually editing, you can then manipulate that color. So I'm not sure though how that would be affected by the light meter and that sort of stuff we were talking about, but at least that's a way to shoot something and then have total control over the color scheme in post. So anyway, that's just something.
Because that can be
I
really
don't know
challenging
if
to
that's-
try to.
I
to
wanted.
match.
I wasn't
I
sure.
don't
That's
know-
why I asked
I
Ben
don't know
if
if we
can
even
do it.
can.
Okay.
I'd have to, you know, this system is so new, I don't know all of the ins and outs of it yet. So I got to play around with it more. There might be that ability, I'm not sure.
It'd be cool to find out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
There was one other thing I was going to say, and I forget now. Oh, I was just going to say, so you were saying, you know, you're trying to keep in mind what the studio lights look like when you're out in the field. And that's why I would recommend shooting it multiple different ways. You know, try shooting it
Oh.
without any lights first, and then
Mhm.
set some lights up, and then maybe change the direction of the lights or the intensity of the lights, or you know, I would shoot it. I would say I would shoot each angle, you know, like 3 different ways, and each of those 3 different ways also do a wide, medium, and close as well. So you're gonna end up having, you know, 30 photos or whatever at the end, but you've got a lot of options then. And that's, that's better than doing it just one shot for each angle, and then you get back here and it's just not at all what you want or what you can work with. And then you gotta go back out and reshoot it. So
Which is never fun.
No.
Yeah, no. Wonder.
so
Yeah, is there anything else about that? Or
yeah, I don't know.
Holly, did you have anything that you were curious about, like as far as your set that you want to make someday, or
I don't
anything like
have
that?
an idea for a set. It's like,
No, that's
that's
cool.
I'm trying to figure out what kind of show it should be, because I have lots of just historical documents.
We could
so-
brainstorm with you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's better offline, but if,
Yeah.
you know, probably better offline. But I still
History,
shows
everyone's
are kind of
asleep.
cool.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have to be. You could bring in like a different background each time. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if you want to do the green screen, just swap
Well, I'm kinda
JPEGs out or
thinking,
something.
'cause,
you know,
yeah,
or,
like
you know.
because I want to try and take like some contemporary images in places where I've got historical images too, and I think I'm seeing some potential. I just don't know what then is happening in front of it, because I wasn't thinking of an interview show.
Sure.
But I love the idea of being able to, maybe have somebody react to the change of image.
I've got an idea for you, Holly. So one thing you could do is you could take one of those old photos and put it here and do like half of your opening segment or something, like saying, this is what this place looked like back in the day. You step forward, and as you step forward, you go to that location, frame the camera the same angle of where that photo was taken, and then finish off your sentence.
I like
In,
that.
yeah, in post-production then, you get that cool transition of going from the past to the
Kind of a
present.
dissolve.
It's like
Kind of.
great.
I-
Except for
that's
me
just a-
being in front of the camera. That's
No, stop it. You did all
So-
the work. Whatever, man.
But I love the idea.
But
Well, and another thing too that I didn't mention at the beginning, this new monitor, this is a brand new monitor that you can use on set as well. This is literally brand new last week, so no one has really utilized this yet. But that can be used in a ton of different ways. I think probably what most people will end up using it for is to do like a logo. You could do either a still logo or like a looping logo for your show. To have it behind your host and your guests or whatever. But even for that type of show, if you're going to do like a magazine show, like that's kind of a historical magazine show, you could have yourself or your host or whoever is going to be the on-camera person introduce a segment with that next to them, type of thing, and either like walk up like Dietrich said, or they could walk in and you could follow them in, and once they get over here and they stop, they've got that monitor right there and it's got a picture, or even you could do multiple pictures and ahead of time like zoom, take them into an editing program and like zoom in and out and fade between these pictures, and have that just kind of looping while they're introducing it, and then you go to the segment. And that's something, I mean, you could do an entire show, if you shoot different segments out in the field, and then you come in here and you tie it together with studio introductions and intros and outros, you could essentially record the whole entire half-hour show here. They could introduce the segment, and then while you go full screen to that segment and you play out that segment, then you switch the background to your next intro or whatever.
some fun ideas to play
Yeah.
with,
Fun
right?
ideas to
That's
play with,
cool.
yeah.
Make it
It's
a
all
little
playing,
more
right?
dynamic than
Yeah.
just one
Well,
image,
yeah.
two images.
This
It's
is
like
a
that.
rock from Edina, Minnesota. I brought it here.
Don't
no,
curse me.
No, I'm
They're minerals.
yeah, they're minerals. They're minerals.
Another thing I was going to mention with lighting too, and specifically with these panels here, this is a very thin material. You can't really see it on camera, but it's just a very thin, white fabric. You could take lights behind these and put gels on them and shine them up through and get different, you could do like 2 red and 2 blue on, one on each side or something like that, or even just maybe 3200 or something, 3200 Kelvin light or something like that to make it look like it's like a window, and there's daylight coming in through it. Or you can play around with those things. A lot of the time when people do that, they tend to put the light down low and they shine up. But you could, with these panels, since they're so tall, you could also do it like up high. You could purposely make it shine a bright light right here and make it look like it's like sun coming in through this window, you know.
Put a curtain over it or something.
So you know, that's something to play around with. Or take lights and I mean, we've got these nice LED lights up on the ceiling that can change colors. They can change pretty much any color you want, really. But you could also just leave those lights on just a, you know, like a regular like 3200 color temperature, and then you could take like one light on each side, more of like kind of like a spotlight sort of thing with 2 different colored gels on it, and maybe splash them up onto the back with like different angles. You know, wouldn't really work with a green screen, but you know, you could do it with like the gray curtains or something like that. Splash up these different lights onto them. There's tons of different stuff that you can do with lights.
Blue-green light looks really nice on that shade of gray.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even look at your final recording of your show. That looked pretty good with the new curtains.
Oh, yeah, it did.
And the lights
It
and
looks
stuff.
really nice, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, cool.
Anything else? Ben, do you have anything in mind? I don't, so I'm done.
Yeah, well, I mean, so, you know, we could sit here and play around for a long time and set up a whole bunch of different sets for you, but that's going to take a lot of time and not going to be so much fun for people watching this recording.
Unless you want to join us.
But yeah, but just things to keep in mind. You know, like I said, we've got tons of different types of chairs. We got like office style chairs. We got more just kind of like an interview style chair. We've got, excuse me, the one that Dietrich was sitting on here. We got a couple of these director's chairs.
I can be your Vanna.
Yeah,
Here, I'll
there you go. We got stools, just like wooden bar stools. We've got these tall panels, short panels, a whole bunch of different types of fake plants and trees. There's a lot of different things that you can use. There you go. There's the interview. The more interview style chair. Thank you.
And the rolling chairs
All
are
right,
adjustable
So-
for height.
So even though, like I said, even though we are limited here on our storage and the amount of set pieces and props that we do have, there's a lot of different ways that you could set up your show here. So it's just something that you got to spend the time coming in and playing around with, and just, you know, people are more than welcome to come in anytime they want and spend, you know, an hour, 2, 3 hours, whatever, just setting up different sets, and, you know, even recording them, you know, so that you can take them home and look at the different sets you set up and see which one you think looks best in camera.
Absolutely.
You know, so. Yeah, and we do have lights available to check out as well, so you don't have to just be, you know, only stuck with the lights that we have up in our light grid. You could, like I said, you could put a couple lights on the background that you're splashing up this like this one sharp angle of red or something like that, or you could.
How easy is it to recreate natural light? So if you're using like natural light
that's
for
a
a
good question.
background, or like outside shots and stuff, is it like a tough thing to don't do it?
It's going to be a little bit more tough. The biggest thing is checking the angle of the sun in your shots. You're going to want your strongest key light to be at that same angle. So I would start out with that, setting your key light first. And that's something, what you could do with that is you could bring it in, put it into the virtual studio, set your backlights first, because your backlights are going to be the ones that shine on the green screen, so you want to make sure your green screen is lit up. Put your shot into the green screen, and set your subject up here, and then one at a time bring up lights to try to adjust it to match what the lighting is in the background. It is going to be a little bit more tough. There's a great video that I posted maybe a month ago now or so on Facebook. Well, you're not on Facebook.
I need to
Sorry.
get on
Anyone
Facebook.
who's on Facebook, go to BCAT's page on Facebook. There's a great video. I could email it to you. The show Atlanta. I've never actually seen it. I really want to, but the season, yeah, I've heard it's great. The season
It
2
is.
intro of it is Donald Glover's. He's the main character and director and creator of it. his character for the was it the intro or was it the
It
promo?
was a trailer. It was a promo trailer.
The promo trailer of it is just him. He starts out standing up and then he falls to one side and then it looks like he's like spinning around and coming back up the other side. And that was all done with green screen in a studio, and he just like would fall onto like some, I'm sure some pillows or something like that. But what they did, this video that I posted, they kind of recreated that. To show you how you could create something similar, and they actually followed him with a camera. They had a camera on a monopod or something that would arc and follow him. But most of these shots, or probably all of these shots of him doing this fall, were outside. The background, the scenes that they put into the background were outside. And so they talked about how matching that lighting was one of the most difficult things. And one of the things that they had to do is while they, so they shot the backgrounds. They went out and shot the backgrounds to make them look like they were spinning. And then in the studio with like the lighting, they would take a light on a pole and they would move it over the top of the person's head so the light was adjusting.
Right.
So, because obviously the angle of the sun as you fall like that is going to change. It's not impossible. I think it's probably more difficult than trying to match, lighting of some interior place. But it's definitely, it's doable.
Yeah, it shows about nature.
Yeah. Hey, absolutely. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, you could definitely do it, I think. I'd love to help you out with it too. I think it'd be fun to figure that out. So that's what I'm here for, to help you figure out these different things, and we can work on those things together. So, yeah.
Well, that's it, folks.
That's it.
Thanks a lot for coming out.
Yes.
Genius, guys.
Thanks for watching.
Now you guys got to clap to make it sound like there's a whole bunch of
Woo! Yeah!
yeah.
Yeah.
And fiend.
Yeah.